remember this. Like I can't remember what it means to be on radio again. Let me not go and touch the fader. So see, and that's I'm firing from all these things.
That's your headset, by the way. All right. We coming.
Radio station.
It's the Office Journal on Smooth 98.1.
Yes, people, it's the Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1, and I welcome you with smiles on my face and my arms spread so wide so that you know that I am ready for you this morning. Or rather, I should say, we are ready for you because I'm not doing this alone. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, hey, get a seat. There is a seat for everyone. The show is called Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1, and it comes to you every Tuesday from 11 till 11:50, 50 solid minutes, although we get to have ad breaks in between, but that does not stop the fun anyways. We get to talk about you, your business, your organization, your brand on days like this. And not just the brand, we're also talking about storytelling, something that is very, very important. As humans, as Africans, we have a lot of stories. I said earlier that we are essentially a summation of our stories, but how much are you using those stories to your advantage? And I have in the studio with me someone who is so skilled in the art of storytelling. His name is Olusegun, and he is someone who's a senior brand consultant, someone who's so passionate not just about Nigeria. In fact, I think he's gladly bullish about Nigeria and Africa. And anywhere you find him, you mostly find him in the middle of conversations that deal with making you better first as a person, as a brand, and of course Nigeria, because we are a summation of the great minds that we are. And he's someone who's worked in the space designing strategies, running campaign, and of course give it a 180-degree, or maybe 360, no, not 360 because it's back to ground zero, a 180-degree makeover to brands through the strategy and design that he has worked out for them. I am talking about the one and the only person. We go way back, and it's just interesting that we get to have this conversation after many years. His name is Olugbemiro Opeyemi. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
Composer.
Am I supposed to like say, oh,
No,
like,
you don't have.
okay,
this,
so
this is not that place.
7 so good morning, Joe. Great to be here. As you mentioned, I'm usually very, very excited about talking about storytelling. Because I think that line was from me that we are like the sum of our stories. I usually say that our lives are broken down into pieces of daily stories, right? And if we can understand how to amplify, know the one to downplay, and know how to manage the stories that get out, I mean, in that way, we're already controlling how people experience us.
Our lives are broken down into daily pieces of our stories.
Our lives are broken down into daily pieces of stories.
That already is a punchline. Please get a book, a marker, a board, whiteboard, and you'll have a lot of punchlines. I think that's actually very cool. True. And if you look at it, that's the truth. Now, before we even delve into the storytelling, let's talk about branding first, because the topic for this conversation is branding, building brands through storytelling. But there is no way we're going to talk about storytelling without first understanding branding. And I'll take you back to some of your words. And again, it's easy to assume that people understand what branding is, but not everyone understands branding. And that's why sometimes you see some ads, you see some communication materials, and you're wondering, how did this get out in the first instance? Don't you understand what you should be doing? Or sometimes you see some PR, especially if it is a what's that thing, damage control, that is supposed to a press release sometimes when there is something that has gone wrong, and you're wondering, don't you understand what you're supposed to do? So taking it back to branding, that was something you said in one of your Medium article. You said branding is not packaging, As I have been in conversations where people think branding is just a way to sell a poor product, while there may be a niche that caters to this at the core, that is not what it is. It is not an effort to deceive people into buying a product they do not need. People can use it to achieve this secondarily sharp. Then branding is not adding logo and copy to mugs, towels, shirt, and other merchandise. Branding is not starting up a business and looking to have the best packaging in the market, or getting a logo or doing any of those peripherals that may cost you money and still not help you build a solid brand. Now, the question is, what then is branding?
I mean, so I think where you started is a conversation I was having around what branding is, and I first mentioned a lot of things that people consider it to be. Because most of the times when you tell someone branding, the first thing that comes to their head is coffee packaging sikini. And for those of you who do not understand Yoruba, it just means let's just put packaging, let's have like logos and a whole lot of other things. So before I go into what branding is, a brand in itself is the mental picture of you in the minds of other people. That's what the brand is, right? So branding is now what are the efforts that you need to have to put into consideration to have over a sustained period of time for people to now have that image that you have designed for yourself. Let's take for instance, I want to be one of the most amazing storytellers out of Africa. That is my brand, right? Branding is now what are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things that I'm going to get to do to make people see me as the most amazing brand storyteller out of the continent. So that's why I say packaging is involved, but that is not what branding is. Putting a logo on stuff is involved, but that is not what branding is. Because, for example, um, if on this wristband now, if it's what it is, and the logo of a multinational, one of the biggest fashion brands, come on this wristband, it changes the cost of this wristband immediately. But the only thing that did that is because when people see the logo, an experience comes to mind, a perception comes to mind.
Yeah.
So what you're building, what you're doing when you're doing branding is building that perception. Every other thing is what helps to solidify that perception in the minds of people. So I mean that's just what branding is. Branding is all the efforts end to end that gets to make people see you in a certain way, the way you have designed in your head. And I'm going to start with also canceling something that I've cancelled every time, everywhere I've gone, everywhere I've spoken in the last like 2 3 years. So I say your brand is not what you say it is, your brand is what people say it is. Um, Something as important as your brand should not be in the hands of someone else, because it means that if your brand is what people say it is, it means that at every point in your life, your brand is what different people that you have met over time have described your life to be. No, right? If there is a conflict between what you say your brand is and what people say it is, that's a problem and not an excuse to settle.
Okay, so take me further on that. How do you get to reinforce and make people know that this is your brand?
So the first thing you need to do before you even reinforce is what is that thing that you have decided your brand to be, right? The first part of branding is identifying who you are. So who you are can be like a business. Who you are could also be like a person, right? What you stand for, your core values, the kind of excellence of service that you want to represent, the kind of people you want to work with, the kind of things you want to say, the things you describe as your key messages, right? So haven't first decided those things, because it's like trying to get to somewhere. Yeah, it's like trying to play football and there's no goalpost, right? So I mean, so the first part of defining or doing branding is defining what a goal is, because it's until you define what a goal is that you can know how you score a goal, right? So that first part is it's like the most integral part. That's like when someone comes to meet me and say, I mean, just give me a logo, and I'm like, okay. Because I mean, what should that logo remind people of? What should people see that logo and come to mind? Because I'm also going to start with an example. So like, and I would end with your question. The akara woman that is selling akara by your estate has a brand and is consistently doing branding. How? First, if that Akara woman has a lot of people coming every morning to come and sit down there, discuss politics, and get to eat Akara at the end of the day, if that Akara woman, everybody on the street knows where to find that Akara woman, knows the time to find that Akara woman, knows the type of Akara, and can vouch for the Akara that the woman has, that's a brand. So it means that now the only thing she will now be doing is what? Conforming to the time that people expect her to be. If people expect her to be there from 7 to 9, she doesn't come 1 to 2 because nobody will meet her there, right? If people have associated her Akara with pepper, she doesn't decide one day to say she wants to reduce the pepper because she feels like reducing the pepper, right? I mean, so it's not that every time she has always sold akara with very fine paper. And one day she just comes and says she wants to sell akara in nylon. That alone has changed a lot of us because akara in nylon is not. It's not akara, right? I mean, so what I'm saying is the first part is defining who you are. Then you now move over to the other part of trying to emphasize. Some of the ways of trying to emphasize is what you're saying, which is like one of the most important because people remember what you say in images. For example, when I tell people that I want to tell the stories of Africa's most ambitious brands, the first thing that comes to the mind of anybody who wants to work with me is that, am I one of the most ambitious brands? So I mean, so if what you say cannot paint pictures in the minds of the people you're trying to reach, you're not doing that well enough.
All right, thank you. I will take a pause on that and then take this ad break. When we come back, I think there is so much that you have to get out. It's like you're brewing freshly brewed palm wine.
So yeah, I mean, yeah.
This is what happens when you get someone who's so passionate about a topic or subject to discuss that particular subject. And I'm so glad this is happening. You can be a part of the conversation. Go to WhatsApp, or you can go to our YouTube channel, or you can go to Twitter, or you can even slide into our DMs. Everywhere you're looking for Smooth 981. And then, of course, the WhatsApp line is 0809 444 0981. Just joining us, this is Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1.
This is Gold Swag on Smooth 98.1.
You're so passionate about this that it's just a little touch and you just calm the
I mean, it's
you. That's why you don't need any preparation.
That's what I want to do to like guys. I mean, I have a responsibility to ensure that Africans become like there is not so much in difference between Africans and several other continents of the world. It's because we have not seen the importance of doing quality work. It's because we have not understood the consequence of not doing quality work. It's because we do not understand the importance of feedback or the importance of a lot of things give them properly or at international level. That is why we do not have, that is why you do not have the level of excellence you need to have on the continent. If everybody on the continent gets to expect, so if everybody on the continent gets to, so if everybody on the continent gets to understand stories, understand branding, it will affect every other person because it means that I am doing my job well so that I do not disappoint my brand.
Yeah.
So it's if the continent understands that, it means elections will be done properly. It means politicians are going to know that them failing has consequences on their election. I mean, it's a lot.
And yeah, I think you already answered part of the question I was going to ask you about some of the things we're doing wrongly as Africans when it concerns branding. But it's still on the table because we got
discounted data
14 seconds to
just
come in.
like that. What are you waiting for? Dial *121# to get started with MTN for me. Funky Fly, Silky Smooth, 98.1.
Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life. Yes, we're silky smooth. There is no argument about that. And that's why we're having a really smooth conversation this morning about your brand. How much of branding do you know? If not, get a seat and get some information in. I have a senior brand consultant here in the studio with me, and we are talking about branding first before going into storytelling. His name is Olubemiru Okpeyemi, otherwise known as Olusegun, which we will come back to, by the way. But before we go into storytelling and how you came about that very interesting name, yes, in case you're not Yoruba too, Olusegun means storyteller. Yes?
Yeah, yeah, that's
All right,
correct.
so back to the branding. Do you agree with this line? Everybody is a brand.
Oh yes. Everybody's a brand. Some people are just very intentional about building theirs. I mean, so my example is usually NaCl. I mean, I'm bad at chemistry, but I wasn't bad at it then. But I have like basic knowledge. So Na and Cl is sodium and chloride, right? If you mistakenly combine Na and Cl together, you get salt, right? If you intentionally combine Na and Cl together, you also get salt. But what happens is the person who intentionally combined can replicate and scale. The person who mistakenly combined does not know what he did to get salt, so he cannot replicate and scale. Everybody is a brand. Yes, that's the truth. But very only people who are intentional about how they came to build that brand can replicate and scale that brand over time.
I had to ask that when you use the example of the Akara woman and how unintentionally she might just wake up and say, I want to start selling in nylon. Because I realize some people come into this thing, they build a brand unintentionally, but then they are not able to go forward because they don't even know what's going on, how people came to flock around them. So it now takes you understanding or trying to analyze that, okay, there was a way I got here and I need to build on that. Fine. But now to you. How did you come into the space where you're so passionate about telling stories?
Oof. How? I mean, so I mean, nobody has really ever asked me the question that way, so I'm trying to see how I can come in. SS1. Let me. There's a story I told on my first TEDx, right? SS1. I had finished SS3 and I got all distinctions. And you know that for secondary school, right? When you're smart, you have to go to science class.
Yep.
When you're not so smart, but people think you're smart, just get
Commercial
commercial class. But those ones that they feel like they're not good enough, just go
arts.
to arts class. It's so bad that when you fail in science class, you just automatically assume that,
Yeah.
oh, pass me science. So art is the place for you. And I'm like, whoa, right? I mean, so SS1, I really wanted to like, I didn't even know maybe I really wanted. So to go to art class. But I did what my parents wanted. And I went to science class. I mean, so SS1, I mean, I was also still one of the top 10 in the whole of my set, right? It's lower than that, but let me just be generous and say top 10 because they may be hearing and be dragging the position. So I mean, so yeah. And when we got to that point, because as at SS1, I was one of the top in the class in the whole set. SS2, what happened was my house is in Port Harcourt, but I schooled in Ondo State, Ikariako to be precise. So it's 7 hours plus on the East-West roads to come and correct the decision I have made. So when I left home, I got to school because they give me my money to buy the textbooks in school. I got to school, bought art textbooks, and called and informed my parents by phone that I have moved to art class, SS2B, right? And I just called and informed them. My teachers insulted me. It's because you are scared. It's because you are this. But one thing that did was, one, the people who were in science class could not look down on me because for a lot of them, I was beating them when I was in science class, right? And another thing I now did was for almost every subject we did together in art and science, I was among top 10. And Greek, mathematics, I came out with A1 in mathematics in my YX just because of that. Because in my head, I was like, we have to become the story to be able to change the narrative.
Mm.
So I mean, for almost every subject we did together, what happened was during my time, it changed the narrative that people who are in art class are dumb because at that point, one of the persons who was in art class was already beating a lot of the people who were in science class. And again, most of the teachers had to eat their words because now they understood that this guy made a decision to want to do this. So SS2 second time, I wrote a letter to Punch. I was like, why are there not a lot of art competitions? Because almost every time we are going to stand Olympiad, everything, almost everything was science competition. So again, I realized that one of the strongest way to change things is to be able to tell your own stories. Because if you're not able to tell your own stories, people will tell your story in a way that benefits them,
Mm.
right? And so again, after secondary school, a lot of people were choosing law. I chose journalism. I went to study mass I chose mass first choice. I chose ISD that a lot of people run to. I chose that second choice. Right, and it was so my parents are like, okay, now we allow you to do art, or yeah, now do law, journalism, right? And because for me, I have always had this in mind that one of the strongest ways to get, at the end of the day, when all things is said and done, most of the people who are able to change the world are the people who are able to visualize what it will look like before it changes.
Mm.
That's where I stay. So and then okay, I now started like the whole love for Nigeria, the whole, like, yeah. I mean, then again, there's an interview, or I was published by one of the major media houses in Nigeria, where I said at the moment I cannot do so much to change a lot of the things that is happening in the country, but if I can inspire a lot more people to be able to visualize what is possible, maybe we can build a critical mass of people who can make it possible.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's where storytelling is for me. I also believe that African businesses, like we were saying when we are off air, that
Yeah.
African businesses can do a lot more if they understand that their actions and inactions form a huge part of what makes them a brand.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. But if there is no punchline you've been able to hold on to, I will tell you one that I was able to get into my notepad. It is that we have to become the story in order for us to change the narrative. Words and Marble, Olusegun 2022. But going further on brands and Africa, let's talk about the importance of stories. Now, individually, we know that we have stories. We're a summation of our stories, but when it concerns brand, how important are stories to brand and brand building and connecting to the target audience? Because sometimes you watch some ads and it just makes you so emotional. There is a particular brand, of course, there is, I'm not going to mention the name, but there was one of the recent a telco brand, one of the recent ad they made. It was so inclusive. They included a deaf, I think a deaf or yeah, deaf girl. There was another blind one, I suppose, and it went viral because of how beautiful and thoughtful that ad was. And even if I don't know how it raked in or how it translated to was
Sales.
yeah, sales for them, but there was just that thing. There was a way it made people feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. So back to the question: how important are stories to building brands and connecting brands with your audience?
I love using practical examples. For those of us who have like 5, 6 friends who are fashion designers, they don't call themselves tailors anymore. So for those of us who have like 5, 6 friends who are fashion designers, at the back of your mind, you know who to give if the event is a big day.
Hmm.
You know who to give if let's just say we have been giving other people, let's just give this one to just help us. We know who to give if it's in the middle, you do not have the budget, you also do not want to spoil it, and the person who should give. Why? It's because over a period of time, you have been able to have conversations with people that solidify the experiences of what to expect from them in your mind. And also, most times we really do not know that the mind captures information at the subconscious level. So what happens is, over time, if you have listened to someone share, you have watched the person's, because I don't know why people do not know that one of the most amazing ways to build a brand in the 21st century in 2022 is having an amazing WhatsApp status, because that thing keeps people glued to you without talking to you.
Sure.
So people already form an expectation, or people form an idea or a perspective of the kind of person you are by just going through your WhatsApp status. So if, for example, this person has posted a caliber of people who come to meet him to sew cloth, he's talk about his philosophy about life, talk about how he pays attention to details, and then you not even get the fabric and the cloth, and you see that this guy really pays attention to detail. Talks about how he loves music, talks about how his story, growing up story, makes him a better tailor. What happens is, at the point when you need, because people think that decisions in itself, there's a Harvard research for this, that decisions in itself are made at a logical level. Yes, at different points of decision making there's logic, but at the final point of decision making there's a whole lot of emotions into play. So it means that if you have not been able to fuel people to the point where when they want to make a decision,
You're the first on the mind.
then there's a problem. That's where storytelling comes in. That's where branding comes in. Um, when it's life and death, you may not want to hear story. That's a different thing. But again, even for that, at a subconscious level, you know that if you have two drugs, right, and this one is properly branded and this one is not properly branded, and you have life and death, which one do you most likely think you'll go for?
The branded.
So it's just, I have seen where people make decisions on what to do, the hospital to go to. I would, another example, I'm usually very practical with examples. There was one time I wanted to fix my car. I went somewhere to do wheel alignment and balancing. This place, it was mechanical. So they do everything, bah, bah, boo, boo, bah. The other place where I normally go to is machines. Everything is machined. They just put my car and the car goes up. And I used this place for my wheel balancing and alignment. And I drove out, and in my mind, I was feeling like the car was going on its own. Because I just didn't feel that they were going to do a good job. And because I didn't feel like they were going to do a good job, it affected my driving, and I thought it was the car that had an issue. So that was emotion strong enough to be able to control physical realities of what my experience would be. Then I now took it back to the other guys, the machine guys, and they checked it, right? And they said, it's fine now. Everything was done properly. Then I drove that same car and I felt comfortable.
Wow.
So it means that how people have formed an opinion about you would definitely affect how they experience you over a period of time. So sometimes it's not even the excellence of your work, it's that people think your work is excellent.
A lot to digest. Thank you very much. I hope you have your cutleries. It is very, very important because you need to break it down in piece and bits of this. This information is very vital. So that's why you should tell your family, friends, and of course those ones who are you're building businesses with, especially the ones you want to last. You're listening to Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1. My name is Olusegun, and my guest is Olubemiro Okpeyemi. I was about to say Okpeyemipo. We'll go on this break and we will be right back. This is Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1.
Hi guys, I hope I'm not too fast.
No, you're not. How are they doing?
Yeah, they're doing fine. I mean,
yeah, just dropping gems. Dropping gems. Dude, are you writing a book?
I don't know. Maybe I'll write one next year. Do you guys want me to write the book? I'm supposed to have a session at the end of the year. I just want to sit down and share my experience. Yeah, maybe next week. Just have people over drinks. They'll pay sharp. I don't know. I mean, so I'm supposed to push out the link today. If I find out the number of people who register, I just want to share my story on the year. Because I went from consulting to execution this year.
You said the story, the forces story.
Which one?
How you went from acting to background. That's forces.
Go on vacation.
Oh, acting for background.
Appliances, furniture, school fees.
I used to with forces.
No.
In 4 to 6 equal installments.
I mean, I just wanted to do something different. It was time. And so guys, I think I'm going to keep this, and you guys can listen from the beginning, especially for people who have not been following.
There's no easier way to say this. Slow internet is bad for business.
Good.
So if you want what's best,
It's like you've lived how many years?
Unit for SMEs. Indeed.
I mean,
Do business at internet speed of up to 200 megabytes per second.
The book will hit different, right, guys? Okay. I mean, I'm not promising, but Victor Fatami has led the front. Maybe I'm going to write a book next year.
You should start writing a book. You have lots of thoughts in different places that you should put together and fine tune. We'll come you back in.
Okay. So guys, we'll continue.
Right here on Smooth 98.
That's exactly how I feel right now with all that I've been getting. Earlier I had a Freudian slip moment when I was talking about the upcoming interview. That was before 11 o'clock. I said, it was going to be a great interview. And the Freudian slip was, I said it was going to be a great consultation because it feels like a consultation. Please do not bill me.
Run me my coins.
You're welcome to join us here on Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1. Lest I get carried away, you are free to send in your questions actually. So you can send in your WhatsApp questions. That is 0809 444 0981. Again, 0809 444 0981. That's the WhatsApp line. Strictly WhatsApp messages. Please do not call the number. And then you can decide to call 01448 9981. I guess you're enjoying this. So yeah, 01448 9981. And you can decide to take it a step further to YouTube, which is youtube.com/ smooth 91 FM Lagos. All right, back to you, my dear Opeyemi. So let's talk about what Nigerian and African brands are doing wrongly when it concerns storytelling and their brands.
That's a question I do not like to answer because I mean they should run my coins. So I'm going to see the safest possible way to get to answer that question.
Just make it generic, it's fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do. So first thing is, I am getting to understand in itself that kind of like that branding can be luxury. In that you need to have gotten some things, a level of some things before you are like thinking and focusing on branding. But let me just not even go there because I don't think that helps to answer the question. So what are the things that I think that they can do better at? So I would not say things that I think they're doing wrong at. It's first off, people really do not understand. People should understand better who they are and what they represent because it's going to influence their actions over time. It means that the first part of protecting a brand is first identifying what the brand stands for, core values, right? This is the level of excellence that I want people to associate with my brand. If anybody sees my logo on any stuff, they should begin to expect that this thing is amazing, is excellent, and I've gone through a lot of attention to details, right? So it is deciding what that thing should be that I think a lot more African and Nigerian brands should reflect. Because most times people have I was having a conversation one time. I think it was a Medium article I wrote a few years ago when I said I would never be a part of a Buy Nigeria, Grow Nigeria campaign, right? Because in my head, I don't know if that was the exact way I wrote it. Because in my head, I was like, one thing is if you build your brand, right, or you have something and you're begging people to buy Nigeria, grow Nigeria, what happens is first there is a general association with Nigerian product that it is not good enough. So it means that you are setting up your brand to fight a battle from the start. Right? So why don't you just build a global product, do excellently, then it's even the people that are now saying, and it's Nigerian, no. You see how people get shocked that when they have quality products that are made by Nigerians in Nigeria for Nigerians, then you have like a lot more equity to push, right? So one of the things we need to begin to do more is begin to just do quality stuff and not talk about quality stuff. Almost everywhere you go now is luxury, premium, and so many of those words that are now being thrown around, right? So I think that is even where I'm just going to anchor, even for politicians, right? There's so much talk and less doing, right? There's so much packaging, which is not the good way to do branding, and people describe that as branding. There's so much lies in the face of so much truth to be told. There are no consequences for lies being told, right? And it's because of a lot of these things not being properly understood. I usually say that another example, I love being practical with examples. When I was in Korea, I used to say that something happens. When this club comes, right, everybody like goes straight to this new club to party and like have fun. But then a new club comes, everybody again moves to the new club to party and kind of like have fun. What happens at the end of the day is if you are not giving people a lot of good equity, good experience to keep people coming back, right? What happens is then if there's a new option, they just move because there's nothing else. Some of us are loyal to our dry cleaners and barbers today as a result of the fact that apart from quality work, we have built an emotional connection. So one of the things that I think people need to start doing is building a lot more emotional connection, but based on quality work. So don't expect me not to fire you because I love you. So, but because you know I love you, do quality work for me.
Thank you for that punchline. Don't expect me not to fire you because I love you, but do quality love work for me because I love you. Right? Did I
Yeah.
get it right?
Yes, I mean yes, because again, that's like the whole stuff about branding
Hmm.
at
That
the
is,
core.
that is very, very important. And I feel more people, what you said now just brought up something that was a topic on Twitter, I believe, at some point when people were talking about supporting small businesses. And they will tell you that there have been times when they supported small businesses that were that of their family and friends, but the service and the product were excuse my language, were terrible. Hmm? So there is that thing. I don't know if I should call the entitlement mentality or just the mentality that feels you can get away with anything because you have a sort of emotional tie or familial tie with that person. And again, goes back to one of the points you say. I think accountability. Nobody is holding you responsible. So let's talk about feedback when it concerns building brands in terms of your perception. I think a lot of Nigerian brands need to have a whole mentality shift when it concerns feedback reception, how they perceive feedback, how they take feedback. That's one side of it. And then a lot of Nigerians and humans too need to have that education on how they give feedback, because I think people are not wired naturally to accept anything negative or that they perceive as negative when it concerns their brand. So you again said it that if you claim your brand is what people say it is, then you literally have no brand. So when it concerns building your brand now, the place of feedback. Yeah, so I had to do the sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so feedback is really important. But again, I usually say that you need someone that is smart enough to hear what is not being said in the feedback, right? There is a general saying, I do not think it was said by Henry Ford, but people associated with him, that if people had asked for, if they had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses and not cars. So it means that they asked for speed, but you gave them something else, speed and convenience. So it means that sometimes when people are screaming that your product is not good, it may not be that your product is not good. It may just mean that it's not fast enough.
Mm.
So your ability to be able to your ability to be able to distill responses into usable data is as important as any other thing on your business, which is why one time I was describing my job as a brand strategist. I think that's my last video on YouTube, and I mentioned that as my job is also to ensure that we are able to distill responses into usable data, right? So it's like, so if people are complaining, then we need to go to the back to the bottom of why are people complaining, exactly what exactly is the problem that is making people, because sometimes people are not even angry at you, people are angry at something else. You are just the face of what they are angry at.
I
So maybe
understand.
the only problem, maybe the solution to your problem is not changing what you're doing, but taking a stand that differentiates you from the person that have associated the quality of your work to.
Mm.
So it is understanding. So feedback for businesses and brands is understanding what to say. It's understanding how to receive what is being said. It is knowing how to interpret what is being said. Um, and I think that we need to be a little bit more informed on how to give feedback. These days, I've been doing well-worded emails to brands who do not do right by me. I mean, someone came to fix my internet a couple of months ago, and I did email straight that this job was poorly done, right? Because for me, I feel that's like the only way to help a lot more people get things to be done properly, right? So it is first people understanding that, because there's the in this part that people associate and manage you until there is a better option. That's why people
Mm.
think that they are the best on the street until there's a new baba in town.
Mm.
So I mean, it's you understanding that because one of the things I used to say on sales calls in the last company I worked on is that you're making $1 billion now does not mean that you're doing your branding right. it just means that if you it also means that if you properly do branding right, that you're making 1 billion now means that you may be making 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 billion. So you are leaving things on the table because you're not connecting with your people. So feedback is an opportunity to connect. Feedback is an opportunity to listen. Feedback is an opportunity to test that value system that you say you have, because most times people say they are good, we have unity, we have all this stuff, then someone violently responds to them and the unity and goodness flies out of the window. As much as I'm usually on the side of customers can sometimes be right. I'm not customers are always right, but I also feel that brands have a responsibility to be responsible to the people who pay their bills.
You sure know how to end every statement with a mic drop statement. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll go on the last break. And when we come back, I'd like to ask the question of brand strategies, which you mentioned in your statement. Do you think it is utterly important, absolutely necessary, totally unavoidable for a brand that wants to thrive and be solid, consistent, and etch their name to have a brand strategies or start out that way? Or do you think it's something that a member of the team can learn about brand strategizing and just go into it? Yeah, so while you ponder on that, we'll take the break and come back. If you're joining us for the first time, well, you got about 8 more minutes to glean wisdom from the sage in the studio. His name is Olusegun Opeyemi, and we are talking about branding and storytelling. This is Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1. So we got about 4 more minutes.
Eh?
We got 4 more minutes.
Hey, I'm gonna try to be brief. That's the last question, right?
Yeah.
With my MTN NG app, now 1 gig data for everybody will download the app. You know me now. You can also get up to 2 gig free data
So
when
guys,
you recharge from
can go
500
back
naira
and
and
listen
above with
again
your
from the
debit card on
beginning
my
and tell
MTN
me,
NG app.
ask questions
Up to
or
2 gig
answer
data
them.
when I recharge with my debit card for my MTN NG app. This na real data Reno.
No be there you end though. You will also get 10% extra on top every airtime recharge when you recharge for my MTN NG app.
Wait, first, so you mean say if I recharge for money on my MTN NG app
You get 10% extra airtime
for evening, Uko?
Where are you doing your
10%
Christmas?
extra airtime on top
Yeah?
your recharge.
How are you
Wait,
doing your
what is
Christmas?
called
Where are you doing your
I'm
Christmas?
in
MTN
Lagos.
NG app.
Correct. I did
Oh my
download
gosh.
now. Hey, natural. Yeah, give me 1 gig one time. Oh yeah, make I go recharge with my debit card. Make I follow collect 2 gig plus 10% extra recharge.
Terms and conditions apply. What are we doing today?
Oh boy. What's the place of commercials? Since I'm not sure I will get to ask that on there. What's the place of commercials and ads in brand communication?
Commercial.
Mhm.
Yeah, extensions. Commercials are important elements that help to reinforce a
But
thought.
guess what time it is?
Yeah, it's just that sometimes you need to do it
for
properly.
every crime that
I
happens
mean,
in Lagos,
an Apple ad
justice
is an
awaits.
Apple ad.
City is above the law, and the new
You
action
know
drama
what to
series,
expect
Crime
from an
and
Indomie
Justice,
ad.
now
They're always
streaming
very,
only on
very
Showmax.
exciting and classic.
Subscribe for
MTN leads the
1,200
front
naira
for
monthly.
some of
Sign up
Nigerian
at
brands.
showmax.com.
So what happens is you need to be able to connect
Easy
with your
betting,
people.
easy winning.
So that's what commercials do.
OneXBet, the most reliable service to make a deposit easily with high
In
odds
other words,
and
you need to
bonus
first get
bonuses
your
on the
brand
spot.
identity
Click
together. It's what you're supposed to project.
Yes, every other thing is supposed to help to make people see you in a certain way.
300% bonus up to 189,280 naira on your first deposit. Easy to use, easy to win. OneXBet, the reliable bookmaker.
Hi, my name is Richard Mufedamijo. I love Smooth 98.1 because they play my kind of music. Love music, love life. Smooth 98.1.
And if you love good information, like the one we've been serving and dishing to you on Office Journal, I think you'd also have another reason to love us, not just the love of music. You're tuning right now to Office Journal here on Smooth 98.1. My name is Olusegun. My guest is Olusegun Opeyemi, and we are talking about branding and storytelling. We've got about 4 more minutes before we wrap this up and tell you to go back to YouTube to search for it. Before that break, I said I was going to ask my guests that final question. So, what is a place of brand strategist? Not the one that doubles, not a a member of the team who doubles as a brand strategist, but one person who fully understands what brand strategy is about. What's the place of the person in building a brand? You need to consult and have that one-on-one or that team session with the person. And while I was asking the question, I thought about how we would many times go at Nigerian musicians who are so good in terms of maybe their delivery or their performance, but the lyrics are not so good. So we'll tell them to consult songwriters. You're supposed to have songwriters, and it's not a bad thing for you to consult them.
Good song noise to rain again also. Our noise to tell them to, because they play now it's raining. What is in the play? Have you listened to the song? There's nothing there. See, there's too much problem. Let's just have fun. So that one is not. Yeah, we cannot be thinking too much. Listen to inspire to aspire to. Now come to song. Let's just be in. She tell me now. She tell me say. She tell me say.
Oh my god.
We are too deep in this one. I mean, so directly to the question. So let me run into it so I can answer it in like a few minutes. Brand strategy is important, but most of the times, especially local companies, I mean companies in Nigeria, are not able to see how they, because that person's work does not give immediate returns. It gives returns over a period of time. How you judge the person's work is the likability of your company improving or increasing. Are people looking forward to your next tweet? Are people looking forward to your next video? Are people looking forward to your next experience, right? So it's usually difficult. So I do not know how to answer that question. There are a few companies in Nigeria who have brand strategists, but most of them go by different names, right? Most of them go by different names, and sometimes it just means that there are external people like us who can just come in, consult for a few period of time, and then hand over to someone on the team who has a little bit more understanding than every other person on the team to be able to maintain and sustain what someone has come from the outside to identify. And so but outside there are a lot, because now for a lot of people there are roles like head of storytelling, vice president storytelling, like
We have such positions.
yeah. So,
This is my first
well,
time.
but not I don't know of anybody in Nigeria, Sha. So it's just that there are different ways this gets done, but exigencies of the local market does not allow for some things to be able to play out. But either you can afford this or not, there should be someone paying attention to how your brand looks. I mean, I think it goes without saying that there are some decisions that you should not make without really just, because I just see some people just do. Are you? Are you?
Well, thank you very, very, very much for all the gems you have dropped, the wisdom you have shared, and of course the experiences that you have given unto us. We appreciate it. No, do not send any invoice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
it's
This
fine.
is your CSR to the good people of Lagos and every other person who's listening.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
And you can catch up with what Olubemiro, or rather Ogbemiro, on all social media platforms is up to. He has a lot of great content. He just dishes out the information like that. You can find it on his YouTube channel. So first you can start on Instagram. You're searching for O_Gbemiro. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And then you can go to Twitter too, where he's very active. O_Gbemiro.
Sure.
And then you can go to YouTube, which is Okpeyemi Olubemiro. That's what you're searching for. And then
That's
of
where
course,
the juice is.
yeah. And then the articles, you can come by them on Medium. That's Okpeyemi Olubemiro. And I
Yeah.
think if you want to take the love a step further, you can subscribe to his community or his group of people,
Oh
right?
no, that newsletter is for very, very. I mean, I don't call it outside. You have to be referred to come in, because I tried to ensure that there are not a lot of people there. There's just about 296 people.
And you're not a lot.
They're not a lot. People have like thousands on their newsletter list now. So I mean, so it's just.
So you like to keep it cozy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just important that I'm able to. I don't want to wait, because I do it every morning. I don't want to wake up and think that I have to start servicing people, because I want it to come natural, that I just feel like, oh, I have a family I have to talk to. So maybe by the time they ever start getting more, I'll just reduce it and maybe stop and start another one. I like the small, yeah.
You are a very interesting person. Very, very interesting. And yes, again, if you want to read more about him, I've already mentioned the platforms and how you can find him. But thank you so much, Opeyemi. I look forward to another of this chat with you. If you will agree to come into the studio, I will be honored. So thank you, and thank you again.
Thank you,
Rem-
Sean.
Remember, you can find this YouTube channel, or rather YouTube video on YouTube on our page, which is youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. Again, youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. You will listen to the news around 11:55, and when you are done, I will be back to play you the good soul music here on Strictly Soul on Smooth 98.1.
Love music.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, it just feels good.
Bye to them. Thank you so much. It was a good one. It was a good one. Oh,
Greetings, my dear. How can the oracle serve you?
Sure.
we should take a picture.
How did that keke move without a driver?
Sure.
My secret is the